Good morning, metalheads of the internet. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown! And today, we are looking at the latest album from Exhumed, entitled Horror. This is the 9th studio album from Exhumed, a long-running extreme metal crew, and everyone's favorite Carcass cover band, wink wink nudge nudge. And at this point in the band's career, they've kind of settled into a creative trench. They know who they are, they know what kind of music they want to play, they're not changing for fucking anybody. They're very similar to a lot of other long-running extreme metal bands in that regard. Take, for instance, Cannibal Corpse, Obituary. At this point, I would even throw Black Dahlia Murder into that group. At this point, I would even throw the Black Dahlia Murder into that group as well. They've been around for 15 years now, and every album has been consistently awesome. In fact, they've arguably gotten better and better with time. However, where Exhumed differs from those bands is that those bands are still willing to do little things here and there to spice things up and to make things a little stronger. I mean, all three bands consistently are refining and fine-tuning everything across every album as time goes on. Cannibal Corpse consistently grows more technical and more brutal, pulling influence from a lot of modern death metal and sharpening that legendary Florida death metal sound. Obituary as well, refining as much as they can. Their self-titled record felt a little more basic in some aspects, but I actually quite welcomed it. There were some interesting influences from blues rock, from sludge metal, from doom metal, making Obituary's signature brand of death feel a little bit more moody. And then there's the Black Dahlia Murder, who at this point I have to assume with every new album release just do 25% more pizza and cocaine, because everything is consistently amped up every fucking time. For the most part, I just haven't seen that same level of subtle evolution from Exhumed. I mean, they definitely have a shock rock factor. Arguably, when it comes to their live shows, they'll have guys decapitated on stage. When I saw them a couple years back, they had someone literally being slaughtered, and the fucking guy in a doctor's uniform ran around with a chainsaw, and they sprayed blood and shit. But as far as the music has been concerned, it's never strayed from being a competent, if perhaps unremarkable, brand of death metal and grindcore, very similar to any of the forerunners of the genre, particularly Carcass. Matt Harvey fucking loves Carcass. That's been evident since day one, hence that joke in the beginning, if you somehow didn't get it. And as such, I've almost gotten into the habit of dismissing Exhumed as simply Diet Carcass. What's exciting about Horror, then, is that Exhumed, I feel, is finally making those necessary changes. Granted, they are still Exhumed. It's not like they've gone into melodic death metal. It's not like they've switched to entire genre altogether, for that matter. But there are things here within the general presentation, aesthetic, and execution of Horror that finally, truly separate Exhumed from the crowd. And while it still may not amount to being the most creative record ever made, in 2019, just standing out amongst the ravenous horde of endless death metal is enough, because this has been a seriously killer year. And let's talk about the presentation first, because I think that's the most interesting thing about this album. Exhumed have adopted a semi-cheesy and self-aware 80s horror movie vibe that fits the band quite naturally. Yes, Death Revenge definitely flirted with a very similar concept, but Horror is way beyond flirting. Horror is having hot fucking badass sex in the back of a pickup truck with this shit. It's evident in everything that surrounds the record. It's evident in the album artwork, designed to look like an old blockbuster-style VHS video. It's evident in the music videos, which kind of have this VHS grainy quality to them. It's evident in the merchandise. It's evident in promotional materials. It's also evident within the lyrics themselves, which are almost pure gore-sploitation and remind me of some of the most violent and hectic material from classic 80s horror films. Their older records, and particularly everything that came after Gore Metal and Slaughter Cult, definitely were a lot more serious by comparison, a lot more stark. Now, mind you, I'm sure there's a diehard Exhumed fan that could argue otherwise, and if that's the case, I honestly wouldn't even mind hearing it. But this is really the first time that I feel like Exhumed have really fully gone to that territory and have taken full advantage of that aesthetic, of that mentality, of that attitude. It's weird to say, but they almost sound joyful, filled with this kind of childlike wonder, which is definitely not something I can say for those older records, regardless if they do have an element of camp in them. But most importantly, the tunes are banging. I mean, every song on here is an absolute ripper. All of them cutthroat, all of them cold-blooded, all of them totally visceral and bloodthirsty and maniacal, and within the performances, within the lyrics, within that aforementioned presentation as well, that bleeds over into everything and makes this feel all the more potent and powerful. Take, for instance, one of my favorite tracks on the record, Naked, Screaming, and Covered in Blood. One of the most ridiculous cuts on the record, and also one of the most fun and engaging. There's an oddly subtle sing-along hook to this whole thing that people will absolutely be playing live, coupled with some furious blast beats, coupled with some grimy fucking riffs. Matt Harvey does tend to wander off into his Jeff Walker impersonation here, particularly with his snarls, but honestly, that's fine. As much as I joke about Exhumed taking from Carcass, let's be honest, Carcass is awesome. If you're gonna take, it may as well be from a band as groundbreaking as Carcass. Another great example, a track like Playing with Fear, which sports some really fucking cool, beefy guitar riffs, giving everything a nice fucking fun grindcore kind of stomp. Some of the really short numbers on this album are also some of the strongest, as this is where Exhumed just says fuck it and indulges in pure violence and insanity. Take, for instance, Utter Mutilation of Your Corpse, a blunt and ferocious number that is every bit as violent as any number of horror movie villains that you could name right now. And I'm actually quite thankful that despite the band's total embrace of 80s horror and goresploitation, they never opt for 80s synth-sounding atmospherics. Like, this is something a lot of death metal bands do, and honestly I think it's a really cheap and lazy way to add atmosphere and tension to a record. Exhumed just say, fuck it, we're gonna let the music speak for itself. I'm gonna give this thing a 4 to 5. I kind of went into this thing kind of going, it's gonna be another Exhumed album, and yeah, I guess to some extent that's not entirely inaccurate. A lot of the issues that I have with Exhumed arguably still remain, but those little tiny bits and pieces don't really matter so long as it's fun, so long as it's effective, so long as it delivers, and it absolutely does. The sound is tight as fuck, the band is running like a well-oiled machine, Matt Harvey is delivering tons of great, tasty riffs and solos across the record, which, by the way, wraps up just under half an hour. It doesn't waste your time, it doesn't pull any bullshit on you. Every single element that made Death Revenge a good record has been elevated to making horror a great record. And perhaps the most fun I've had listening to an Exhumed record in a while now, if we're being fully honest. Would this change your mind if you truly despise the band? Probably not, but they've been around long enough that at this point, you should know who they are and you should know what kind of music they make. You know, it's really that simple. Longtime fans are going to love this thing. Fans of nasty fucking music from death metal and grindcore are going to love this thing. If you're looking for something a little more jovial in contrast to some of the politically and socially poignant death metal we've heard so far this year from artists like Venom Prison, or for that matter, the ultra brutal fucking nonsense that we've heard from other bands such as Tomb Mold, then this is great, you know? 4 to 5, great record. It's exactly the kind of record Exhumed needed to make right now, considering how much fucking death metal is out there, and I'm hoping that they continue to very subtly evolve and refine all of these elements, and who knows, maybe the next record will be a 4.5 out of 5, maybe it'll be one of the best death metal albums of that year. Who fucking knows at this rate? For now, 4 to 5, seriously fun, cool record, check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.